For over 2,000 years, the rose-colored rock formations of Petra have captivated explorers, historians, and dreamers from across the globe. This ancient Nabatean city, carved into the sandstone mountains of Jordan, has served as a testament to human ingenuity and engineering prowess. Yet, despite centuries of study and exploration, Petra has continuously revealed that its mysteries run far deeper than surface observations could ever suggest. In recent years, cutting-edge archaeological technology has lifted a veil on secrets that have remained hidden since antiquity, uncovering discoveries that challenge everything we thought we knew about this remarkable civilization. The narrative of Petra's exploration is one of perpetual surprises. Early archaeologists who first documented the site in the 19th century were astonished by the architectural sophistication evident in every carved column, facade, and ornamental detail. However, their focus remained predominantly on what could be seen: the grand exteriors, the elaborate tombs, and the intricate carvings that adorned the cliff faces. What lay beneath the ground, entombed in darkness and protected by layers of accumulated sediment, remained beyond their reach and imagination. This oversight would persist for generations, allowing one of history's most significant archaeological secrets to remain undiscovered. The turning point in our understanding of Petra came with the advancement of non-invasive archaeological technology. Ground-penetrating radar, a method that had proven successful in other archaeological contexts worldwide, was finally deployed in the Petra courtyard with the intention of identifying subsurface anomalies. When initial scans were conducted, researchers detected something unexpected: a distinct void beneath the surface of the heavily trafficked courtyard in front of the treasury, Petra's most iconic structure. This hollow space appeared to be deliberately constructed, far too organized to be a natural geological formation, and positioned in a location that suggested intentional placement by ancient builders. The implications were staggering. For decades, archaeologists had theorized that the treasury's current ground level was not its original floor. Centuries of destructive flash floods had deposited enormous quantities of debris and sediment that raised the courtyard's elevation dramatically. This meant that the lower portions of the treasury, and potentially important structures beneath it, remained buried. The radar data now provided concrete evidence of what researchers had long suspected. A chamber existed below, sealed away from the elements and from human disturbance, waiting to be properly investigated. The decision to excavate was not made lightly. Petra holds the status of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, one of the most significant and carefully protected archaeological zones on the planet. Any excavation, particularly one directly beneath the treasury itself, would require extraordinary permissions, meticulous documentation, and adherence to the highest scientific standards. The international archaeological community would be watching. Jordanian authorities would be overseeing every decision. The stakes were immeasurably high for both scientific integrity and the preservation of the site itself. The excavation team, assembled from leading institutions and guided by experienced archaeologists, approached the work with surgical precision. The Seek, the narrow gorge that serves as the primary approach to Petra, created immediate logistical challenges. Heavy equipment could not be easily transported through this constricted passage. Furthermore, Petra remains an active tourist destination, with thousands of visitors arriving monthly to experience the majesty of the treasury. All work had to be conducted with minimal disruption to the visitor experience, often requiring nighttime operations or carefully scheduled periods when access could be temporarily restricted. The process of accessing the chamber was itself a remarkable feat of archaeological engineering. As excavators descended through successive layers of accumulated sediment, they employed increasingly refined tools. The initial shovels and picks gave way to trowels, and eventually to dental picks and fine brushes. This transition from crude to delicate implements reflected the team's growing understanding that they were approaching a sealed archaeological context, a space that had potentially remained undisturbed for nearly 2 millennia. Every centimeter of descent required absolute precision to ensure that evidence was not damaged or lost in the excavation process. When the first opening was finally made into the darkness of the sealed chamber, a remarkable phenomenon occurred. Stale air, preserved since the 1st century, escaped the void with an almost audible sigh. The researchers described the sensation as profoundly moving. They were essentially breathing air that had been isolated from the modern world since the height of the Roman Empire. This moment marked the true beginning of discovery, the transition from theoretical understanding to physical encounter with ancient history. As lights were directed into the chamber for the first time in nearly 2,000 years, the initial images proved astonishing. The chamber itself was not elaborate or ornate. Unlike the carefully finished rooms of wealthy Roman homes or the decorated burial chambers of Egyptian tombs, these stone walls bore the marks of utilitarian construction. Tool marks from ancient masons were visible across the surfaces. The room had been designed for function, not for ostentatious display. Yet this very plainness lent the space an authenticity and poignancy that elaborate decoration might have diminished. What emerged from the dust and shadow of the chamber proved far more compelling than any material wealth could have been. Arranged across the floor were the skeletal remains of 12 individuals. Unlike the neat museum displays that modern audiences associate with ancient skeletons, these remains were positioned exactly as they had been placed at the moment of burial. The bones retained the spatial relationships established over 2,000 years ago, creating an immediate and visceral connection to the moment of interment. This was not a clinical archaeological find presented in sterile condition. It was a moment frozen in time. The configuration of the remains revealed intimate details about the burial practices of the Nabatean people. The skeletons were not stacked haphazardly or arranged with the simple efficiency of a mass grave. Instead, they appeared to have been positioned with careful intention. In certain areas, the remains of 2 individuals lay in such close proximity that their rib cages overlapped, suggesting that they had been placed together intentionally, perhaps representing a familial bond that extended beyond death. Nearby, a smaller skeleton, presumably a child, had been positioned near the larger frame of what was likely a parent, with arm bones oriented as though providing protection even in death. Forensic analysis of the skeletal remains provided unexpected insights into the health and status of the deceased. These individuals were not, as one might expect from a mass burial in an ancient city, representatives of the poorest or most marginalized segments of society. Their bones indicated adequate nutrition throughout their lives. Dental health, which serves as a reliable indicator of overall health and dietary sufficiency, suggested that these people had enjoyed access to adequate resources. Some showed signs of having reached relatively advanced ages, uncommon in ancient populations. Their skeletal density and structure indicated individuals who, while certainly subject to the rigors of ancient life, had not endured the extreme privation or abuse that characterized the lower echelons of ancient society. The implication was startling. This was not a plague pit or repository for the destitute. These were individuals of recognized status within Nabatean society, people important enough to receive deliberate burial rites and to be placed in a secure location protected by the very structure that dominated the city's landscape. The practice of burying valued individuals beneath the most prominent building in a city had parallels in ancient burial customs across multiple civilizations, suggesting a belief that the dead should be placed at the symbolic and physical heart of the community. The artifacts discovered alongside the skeletal remains provided crucial chronological and contextual information. The most striking discovery was a ceramic vessel found in the hands of one skeleton. To the untrained eye, it might have appeared as an unremarkable piece of ancient pottery, a simple chalice with a tapered base and flared rim. However, to archaeologists specializing in Nabatean material culture, the vessel's form, clay composition, and firing technique told a precise story. This was a product of the mid-1st century before the Common Era, a period when Petra was experiencing unprecedented prosperity and expansion under the reign of King Aretas IV. The presence of this vessel was freighted with symbolic meaning. Nabatean burial practices typically included vessels intended to sustain the deceased in the afterlife. Water and food offerings were placed with bodies, reflecting religious beliefs about the needs of the departed. The presence of this particular vessel, carefully positioned in the remains' hands, suggested that whoever had interred these individuals believed they would require sustenance in whatever realm existed beyond death. It represented a final act of care and provision, a family's attempt to ensure that their loved ones would not face the unknown journey alone or unprepared. Additional artifacts excavated from the chamber revealed further information about the status and beliefs of the people who had been buried there. Bronze rings, now oxidized to green verdigris, suggested access to resources and material wealth. Iron tools and implements, valuable commodities in any ancient society, indicated that these individuals had possessed or controlled significant resources. The deliberate decision to bury such valuable items, effectively removing them from the economy of the living to accompany the dead, demonstrated the profound commitment to honoring these individuals. In a desert environment where resources were perpetually scarce, such a sacrifice held particular weight. Evidence of incense and aromatic materials was also recovered from the chamber's sediment. The Nabateans had built their commercial empire partially on their control of the frankincense and myrrh trade, luxuries highly prized throughout the Mediterranean world. The presence of these materials in the burial chamber suggested that when the room was sealed, the air would have been thick with fragrant smoke, creating a sensory experience designed to bridge the mundane world with the sacred realm of the afterlife. The ceremony of closure would have been a multisensory event, engaging sight, sound, smell, and perhaps taste as mourners performed rituals intended to honor and protect the departed. The Nabatean civilization that created and maintained Petra represents one of history's most fascinating cultural achievements. Often characterized as a phantom civilization due to the rapidity of their historical emergence and decline, the Nabateans nonetheless created a commercial and cultural empire of remarkable sophistication. Originating from nomadic roots in the Arabian Peninsula, they transformed themselves into master traders and merchants who controlled the flow of luxury goods between the Eastern and Western worlds. Their ability to create a thriving urban center in one of the world's most hostile environments demonstrated engineering capability, organizational sophistication, and psychological insight that rivals any ancient civilization. What distinguished Nabatean achievement was their approach to power and permanence. Rather than building massive fortifications visible from great distances, as Roman conquerors favored, the Nabateans hid their prosperity within the rock itself. They engineered sophisticated hydraulic systems that captured and stored water with remarkable efficiency. A visitor approaching Petra might observe only barren cliffs and scorched earth, remaining completely unaware that a city of thousands thrived beyond the sea's narrow confines, complete with gardens, fountains, and the material abundance that trade wealth provided. This duality, the hidden contrasted with the ostentatious, characterized Nabatean culture deeply. The treasury's exterior is a Hellenistic declaration of power, its columns and motifs broadcasting influence and cosmopolitan sophistication to any who beheld it. Yet beneath this visible grandeur existed a secret chamber dedicated to the private veneration of ancestors, hidden from view and sealed deliberately against intrusion. This suggests a civilization that understood the distinction between public persona and private reality, between the face presented to the world and the truths preserved in darkness. The identity of the 12 individuals remains partially mysterious, though the artifacts and biological evidence provide strong suggestions. The mid-1st century dating places them during the reign of Aretas IV, an era of extraordinary expansion and prosperity for Petra. The elevated health and status indicators suggest these may have been members of the ruling elite, administrators who managed trade routes, or individuals closely connected to the royal household. Their burial beneath the treasury implies that they held significance extending beyond their individual lives, suggesting they may have represented dynasties or families crucial to the city's prosperity. One compelling interpretation holds that these individuals served as foundational sacrifices or symbolic anchors for the treasury structure. In various ancient cultures, the burial of important individuals within or beneath crucial civic structures was believed to sanctify and strengthen those structures spiritually and politically. The placement of these remains directly beneath the city's most iconic buildings suggests that their bodies were meant to serve as a permanent, unshakable foundation for Petra's greatest monument. In this interpretation, their burial was not merely a funerary matter but a state act, positioning them as eternal guardians of the city itself. The preservation conditions within the sealed chamber proved remarkable. The stable, dry environment had halted the normal process of decomposition at a particular point, leaving skeletal remains in excellent condition relative to many ancient discoveries. This preservation allowed for analyses that would have been impossible had the remains been exposed to weathering or had undergone more advanced decomposition. DNA analysis became possible, as did isotope analysis of bone and tooth material, allowing researchers to determine where these individuals had been raised and whether they were native to Petra or had migrated from elsewhere. Preliminary isotopic analysis revealed a startling finding. These 12 individuals did not all originate from the same geographic region. Some isotopic signatures suggested origins in the local Petra area, while others pointed to more distant regions of the Arabian Peninsula, the Levantine coast, or even farther reaches of the Mediterranean world. This finding provided evidence that Petra's population, at least among its upper classes, was cosmopolitan and diverse. The city that served as a crossroads for trade was equally a crossroads for peoples, a place where individuals